The Power of Communication, Skills to Build Trust, Inspire Loyalty, and Lead Effectively by Fred Garcia. Here's a list of important questions that you may consider asking yourself when learning from The Power of Communication, Skills to Build Trust, Inspire Loyalty, and Lead Effectively by Fred Garcia. 1. What is the role of communication in building trust, inspiring loyalty, and effective leadership? 2. What are the key components of effective communication, including verbal, nonverbal, and written communication? 3. How can I improve my listening skills to enhance my communication abilities? 4. What are the best practices for verbal communication, including language choice, tone, and messaging? 5. How does nonverbal communication, such as body language and facial expressions, impact the effectiveness of my communication? 6. How can I improve my written communication skills, including email, reports, and other written documents? 7. What techniques can I use to communicate with influence, such as persuasion, negotiation, and storytelling? 8. How can I effectively communicate during crisis situations, including strategies and best practices? 9. What are the challenges and opportunities of communicating in a diverse and inclusive environment, and how can I adapt my communication accordingly? 10. How does effective communication play a role in leadership, including vision casting, motivating, and inspiring others? 11. What strategies can I implement to build and maintain trust through my communication? 12. How can I overcome common communication challenges, such as misinterpretation, miscommunication, or conflicts? 13. What are the ethical considerations in communication, and how can I ensure that my communication aligns with ethical principles? 14. How can I apply the concepts and techniques learned from this book to my own personal and professional communication situations? 15. What are the practical steps I can take to continuously improve my communication skills and apply them in my leadership roles? These questions can serve as a guide for critical thinking and reflection as you read and learn from The Power of Communication, Skills to Build Trust, Inspire Loyalty, and Lead Effectively by Fred Garcia, helping you to actively engage with the material and apply it to your own communication practices. Answer key at the end of the video. Chapter title summary. 1. Introduction provides an overview of the importance of communication skills in building trust, inspiring loyalty, and effective leadership. 2. Understanding communication explores the fundamentals of communication, including its components, types, and models. 3. Trust, the foundation of communication, discusses the role of trust in communication and its significance in building strong relationships. 4. The Power of Listening emphasizes the importance of active listening and effective communication and its impact on building trust. 5. Verbal communication explores the nuances of verbal communication, including language choice, tone, and messaging. 6. Nonverbal communication discusses the impact of nonverbal communication, such as body language, facial expressions, and gestures, in conveying messages. 7. Written communication provides insights into effective written communication, including email, reports, and other written documents. 8. Communicating with influence discusses techniques for communicating with influence, including persuasion, negotiation, and storytelling. 9. Crisis communication explores the strategies and best practices for effective communication during crisis situations. 10. Communicating in a diverse world addresses the challenges and opportunities of communicating in a diverse and inclusive environment. 11. Leading through communication discusses the role of communication in effective leadership, including vision casting, motivating, and inspiring others. 12. Building and maintaining trust provides practical tips and strategies for building and maintaining trust through effective communication. 13. Overcoming communication challenges explores common communication challenges and provides strategies for overcoming them. 14. Communication ethics discusses the importance of ethical communication and the ethical considerations in various communication contexts. 15. Conclusion summarizes key concepts and provides final thoughts on the power of communication in building trust, inspiring loyalty, and leading effectively. Introduction provides an overview of the importance of communication skills in building trust, inspiring loyalty, and effective leadership. Title: The Art of the Deal, a 1920s mobster negotiation. It was the height of the Prohibition era in Chicago, and the notorious mobster boss, Salvatore Sal Marconi, sat in his lavish office, cigar in hand, as he prepared for a high-stakes negotiation. Sal knew that communication skills were key to his success in building trust, inspiring loyalty, and maintaining effective leadership among his crew. The negotiation was with the rival gang leader, Tony the Blade Rossi, over the control of a lucrative speakeasy operation. Sal knew that this negotiation could make or break his reputation as a leader in the mobster underworld, and he was determined to come out on top. As the negotiation began, Sal utilized his communication skills to establish rapport with Tony. He greeted him warmly, making sure to maintain eye contact and use a firm, confident tone. He listened attentively to Tony's demands, nodding in agreement to show that he understood and respected his concerns. But Sal was no pushover. He knew the importance of assertiveness in negotiation. He skillfully conveyed his own demands, laying out his terms with clarity and conviction. He used persuasive language, citing facts and figures to back up his arguments, and remained calm and composed, despite Tony's attempts to provoke him. Sal also understood the power of active listening. He asked open-ended questions to gather information and gain insights into Tony's motivations and priorities. He acknowledged Tony's points of view and expressed empathy towards his concerns, while still advocating for his own interests. The negotiation went back and forth, with both sides trying to outmaneuver each other. Sal used his communication skills to build trust by being transparent and honest in his communication. He emphasized the benefits of a mutually beneficial agreement and highlighted the long-term gains for both parties. As the negotiation progressed, Sal also showed his leadership skills. He remained confident and composed, even in the face of tough challenges. He delegated tasks to his trusted lieutenants, who provided support and helped gather additional information to strengthen Sal's arguments. After hours of intense negotiation, Sal and Tony finally reached a compromise. They agreed to split the profits of the speakeasy operation, with Sal retaining control of the overall operation. Both parties left the negotiation satisfied, and Sal knew that his communication skills had played a crucial role in securing the deal. As Sal reflected on the negotiation, he realized the importance of effective communication in his role as a mobster boss. Building trust, inspiring loyalty, and maintaining effective leadership were not just abstract concepts, but practical skills that were critical to his success in the cutthroat world of organized crime. From that day on, Sal continued to hone his communication skills, recognizing that they were a powerful tool in his arsenal for navigating the dangerous waters of mobster negotiations, building strong relationships with his crew, and solidifying his position as a respected leader in the 1920s mobster world. Understanding Communication explores the fundamentals of communication, including its components, types, and models. Title: The Art of Persuasion, a 1920s mobster negotiation in the bustling streets of New York City during the roaring 1920s. Frankie the Fixer Santoro, a renowned mobster known for his negotiation skills, was facing a formidable challenge. He had received a tip about a rival gang encroaching on his territory, and he knew that a negotiation was inevitable. Frankie understood the importance of communication in negotiation, and he was well versed in the fundamentals of the craft. He knew that effective communication was not just about the words spoken, but also about the nonverbal cues, tone, and context. He carefully planned his approach, considering the components and types of communication to gain an advantage. When the day of the negotiation arrived, Frankie and his trusted associate, Benny, met with the rival gang leader, Jimmy the Bulldog Malone, in a dimly lit speakeasy. The tension in the room was palpable, but Frankie remained calm and composed. He started the negotiation by establishing rapport with Jimmy, using active listening skills to understand his concerns and motivations. He paid attention to Jimmy's body language, tone of voice, and choice of words to decipher his true intentions. He also used his own nonverbal cues to convey confidence and authority, making sure to maintain eye contact and use a firm but respectful tone. Frankie then utilized different communication techniques to persuade Jimmy to see things from his perspective. He used the power of storytelling, painting a vivid picture of the benefits of a mutually beneficial agreement. He employed rhetorical questions to challenge Jimmy's assumptions and planted seeds of doubt in his mind about the rival gang's intentions. Frankie also utilized negotiation models, such as the principled negotiation approach, to guide the conversation. He focused on finding common ground, generating creative solutions, and maintaining a collaborative tone. He used effective questioning techniques to gather information and uncover hidden interests. Throughout the negotiation, Frankie displayed strong leadership skills. He remained composed under pressure and delegated tasks to Benny, who supported him by providing crucial information and insights. Frankie also leveraged his reputation and relationships in the underworld to build trust and credibility with Jimmy. After hours of intense negotiation, Frankie and Jimmy finally reached a mutually beneficial agreement. They agreed to divide the territory peacefully, with clear boundaries and rules in place. Both parties left the negotiation satisfied, and Frankie knew that his understanding of communication had played a crucial role in the successful outcome. As Frankie reflected on the negotiation, he realized that communication was not just about talking, but also about actively listening, observing, and adapting. It was a skill that he had honed over the years, and it had served him well in navigating the complex dynamics of the 1920s mobster world. He knew that effective communication was a powerful tool that could help him build trust, inspire loyalty, and achieve his goals in the cutthroat world of organized crime. Trust, The Foundation of Communication discusses the role of trust in communication and its significance in building strong relationships. Title: The Trust Game, a 1920s mobster negotiation in the gritty streets of Chicago during the Prohibition era of the 1920s. Salvatore Sal Rossi, a seasoned mobster, found himself in a precarious situation. He needed to strike a deal with a rival gang led by the notorious Johnny the Snake Johnson, but trust was scarce in the cutthroat world of organized crime. Sal knew that trust was the foundation of effective communication, and building it was crucial in establishing strong relationships. He had learned from his years of experience that without trust, negotiations could easily turn sour, leading to betrayal or violence. When Sal met with Johnny in a secluded warehouse, he knew he had to tread carefully. He started the negotiation by establishing a personal connection, reminiscing about their shared history and common interests. He spoke with sincerity and authenticity, knowing that trust could not be forced, but had to be earned. Sal also demonstrated trustworthiness through his actions. He kept his promises, delivered on his commitments, and showed respect towards Johnny's concerns and opinions. He refrained from using manipulative tactics or deception, as he knew that honesty and integrity were essential in building trust. Despite the initial tension, Sal and Johnny gradually started to develop a rapport. They shared stories, laughed over a drink, and found common ground in their mutual desire for profit and power. Sal also actively listened to Johnny's grievances and concerns, showing empathy and understanding. As the negotiation progressed, Sal utilized his communication skills to build trust further. He used active listening to uncover Johnny's underlying interests and motivations. He used open-ended questions to encourage Johnny to share more about his goals and aspirations. He also practiced empathy, putting himself in Johnny's shoes and showing genuine concern for his needs. Sal also leveraged his reputation and relationships in the criminal underworld to vouch for his trustworthiness. He brought in trusted allies as intermediaries to vouch for his sincerity and reliability. He also shared information and insights that demonstrated his knowledge and expertise in the business. After hours of intense negotiation, Sal and Johnny finally reached a tentative agreement. They agreed to a truce, with the temporary division of territories and resources. They shook hands, sealing the deal with a sense of mutual respect and trust. As Sal left the warehouse, he realized that trust was the currency that fueled the world of organized crime. It was the foundation of effective communication, and without it, negotiations would be futile. He knew that building and maintaining trust was an ongoing process that required constant effort, but it was the key to building strong relationships, inspiring loyalty, and achieving success in the ruthless world of 1920s mobsters. The Power of Listening emphasizes the importance of active listening and effective communication and its impact on building trust. Title: The Listening Game, a 1920s mobster negotiation in the bustling city of New York during the roaring 1920s. Angelo the Shark Marino, a notorious mob boss, found himself in a high-stakes negotiation with a rival gang led by the cunning Vincent the Viper Valentino. Angelo knew that communication was a powerful tool in his line of work, and that active listening was the key to gaining an advantage in any negotiation. Angelo was known for his sharp wit and quick temper, but he also understood the importance of listening. He knew that effective communication was a two-way street, and that listening was just as crucial as speaking in building trust and gaining insights into his opponents. When Angelo and Vincent met in a smoky speakeasy, tensions were high. They both had their guards up, aware of each other's reputations as ruthless mobsters. Angelo started the negotiation by using his listening skills, maintaining eye contact, and showing genuine interest in Vincent's perspective. Vincent, initially wary of Angelo's intentions, was taken aback by his attentive listening. He was used to opponents who only cared about their own agenda, but Angelo's genuine curiosity and engagement caught him off guard. Vincent began to open up, sharing his concerns, and revealing his motivations behind the ongoing turf war. Angelo listened intently, nodding in understanding and asking open-ended questions to encourage Vincent to share more. He refrained from interrupting or jumping to conclusions, allowing Vincent to express himself fully. He also practiced empathy, acknowledging Vincent's grievances and validating his feelings. As the negotiation progressed, Angelo's active listening skills paid off. He gained valuable insights into Vincent's priorities and goals, which helped him tailor his own proposals to align with Vincent's interests. He also uncovered areas of potential compromise and identified common ground that could lead to a mutually beneficial agreement. In addition to active listening, Angelo used other communication techniques to build trust. He maintained his composure, refrained from using aggressive language or gestures, and remained respectful towards Vincent's opinions. He also shared information transparently and honestly, reinforcing his credibility and trustworthiness. After hours of intense negotiation, Angelo and Vincent finally reached a breakthrough. They found a middle ground that satisfied both parties and put an end to the turf war. They shook hands, sealing the deal with a newfound sense of respect and understanding. As Angelo left the speakeasy, He realized the power of listening and effective communication. It had allowed him to gain insights, build trust, and ultimately achieve his negotiation objectives. He knew that in the cutthroat world of mobsters, communication skills, particularly active listening, were not just a luxury, but the strategic advantage that could make or break a deal. Verbal communication explores the nuances of verbal communication, including language choice, tone, and messaging. Title: The Art of the Deal. A 1920s mobster negotiation in the gritty streets of Chicago during the Prohibition era of the 1920s. Salvatore "Slick" Lombardi, a charismatic mobster known for his silver tongue, found himself in a high-stakes negotiation with a rival gang led by the notorious Tony the Bulldog DiCaprio. Slick understood the power of verbal communication and knew that every word he chose, tone he used, and message he conveyed could make or break the deal. Slick was known for his smooth talking skills and his ability to influence others with his words. He was a master of language, and he knew that choosing the right words could sway opinions, establish rapport, and build trust. As he sat across the table from Tony in a dimly lit speakeasy, he carefully chose his words, mindful of their impact. He began the negotiation with a friendly tone, using words that conveyed respect and cooperation. He avoided aggressive language and kept his tone measured, aiming to establish a positive atmosphere for the negotiation. He also paid close attention to Tony's verbal cues, listening not just to the words he said, but also to his tone and body language. Slick used strategic messaging to present his proposals. He framed his ideas in a way that appealed to Tony's interests, using persuasive language that highlighted the benefits of his proposals. He avoided vague or ambiguous language, ensuring that his messages were clear and concise. He also used storytelling techniques to illustrate his points, painting vivid pictures with his words to captivate Tony's attention. Throughout the negotiation, Slick used verbal communication to build rapport and establish trust. He mirrored Tony's language style and tone, creating a sense of familiarity and connection. He also paid attention to nonverbal cues, maintaining eye contact and using bodied language that conveyed confidence and sincerity. As the negotiation progressed, Slick encountered challenges. Tony was known for his stubbornness and was resistant to some of Slick's proposals, but Slick didn't let it deter him. He remained calm and composed, choosing his words carefully to diffuse tension and find common ground. He used active listening to understand Tony's concerns and addressed them with empathy and understanding. Through his adept verbal communication skills, Slick was able to navigate the negotiation successfully. He struck a deal with Tony that was mutually beneficial, and they shook hands, sealing the agreement. Slick walked away from the speakeasy knowing that his verbal communication skills had played a crucial role in his success. Slick understood that in the world of mobsters, verbal communication was a powerful tool that could sway opinions, build trust, and ultimately lead to successful negotiations. He knew that mastering the nuances of language choice, tone, and messaging was essential in achieving his negotiation objectives, and he continued to hone his verbal communication skills for future dealings in the cutthroat world of organized crime. Nonverbal communication discusses the impact of nonverbal communication, such as body language, facial expressions, and gestures, in conveying messages. Title: The Unspoken Code, a 1920s mobster negotiation. In the bustling city of New York during the 1920s, Frankie the Snake Russo, a feared and respected mobster, found himself in a high-stakes negotiation with rival gang leader, Johnny the Hammer Sullivan. As a seasoned negotiator, Frankie understood that communication went beyond just words. Nonverbal communication played a crucial role in conveying messages, and he knew how to read and use it to his advantage. Frankie was known for his keen observation skills and his ability to interpret nonverbal cues. He paid close attention to body language, facial expressions, and gestures, as they revealed a wealth of information that words alone couldn't convey. As he sat across the table from Johnny in a smoky speakeasy, he carefully observed his opponent's nonverbal cues, looking for any signs of weakness or deception. Frankie used his own nonverbal communication strategically to convey confidence and assertiveness. He maintained eye contact with Johnny, sending a subtle message that he was not to be underestimated. He used gestures, such as nodding his head in agreement, to show his willingness to cooperate. He also controlled his facial expressions, keeping them neutral and composed, despite the tension in the room. Johnny, on the other hand, was more impulsive and showed signs of nervousness through his fidgeting, avoiding eye contact, and clenched fists. Frankie used this to his advantage, interpreting these nonverbal cues as a sign of Johnny's insecurity and used it to gain an upper hand in the negotiation. Frankie also used nonverbal cues to build rapport and establish trust. He greeted Johnny with a firm handshake, which conveyed sincerity and confidence. He mirrored Johnny's bodied language and tone of voice, creating a sense of familiarity and connection. He also paid attention to Johnny's nonverbal cues during the negotiation, using them to gauge his reactions and adjust his approach accordingly. As the negotiation progressed, Frankie used nonverbal cues to emphasize key points. He leaned in slightly and raised his eyebrows when making important proposals, signaling their significance. He also used hand gestures to illustrate his ideas, making his messages more memorable and impactful. Despite the challenges and tension, Frankie remained composed and in control of his nonverbal communication. He was aware of the power of nonverbal cues in conveying messages and influencing perceptions, and he used them to his advantage. His strategic use of nonverbal communication helped him navigate the negotiation successfully. In the end, Frankie and Johnny reached a compromise that satisfied both parties. They shook hands, sealing the deal, and parting ways with a mutual respect. Frankie knew that his mastery of nonverbal communication had played a pivotal role in the negotiation's success and reaffirmed the unspoken code of the mobster world, that nonverbal communication was just as important, if not more, than verbal communication in conveying messages and building trust. Frankie's keen understanding and strategic use of nonverbal communication had earned him a reputation as a shrewd negotiator in the mobster underworld. He continued to sharpen his nonverbal communication skills, knowing that they were a powerful tool in his arsenal, helping him navigate the complex world of organized crime and achieve his objectives. Written communication provides insights into effective written communication, including email, reports, and other written documents. Title: Ink and Intrigue. A 1920s mobster tale. The year was 1925, and the city of Chicago was a hotbed of crime and corruption. In the midst of this underworld, two prominent mobsters, Anthony the Ace Marino and Vincent the Viper Rossi, found themselves embroiled in a fierce rivalry for control of the lucrative bootlegging trade. Anthony was known for his suave demeanor and sharp wit. He was a master of written communication and often used it to his advantage in his dealings with rival gangs. His office, located in the heart of the city, was a testament to his meticulousness. The walls were adorned with maps, charts, and reports, detailing every aspect of his operation. His desk was littered with papers, and a vintage typewriter sat prominently in the corner, ready to unleash his next strategic move. Vincent, on the other hand, was a hothead with a penchant for violence. He preferred face-to-face negotiations and scoffed at the idea of written communication. His office, located in a dimly lit speakeasy, was a stark contrast to Anthony's. The air was thick with cigarette smoke, and the walls were adorned with framed pictures of his criminal exploits. The tension between the two mobsters had been escalating, and their negotiations had reached a stalemate. Anthony knew that a well-crafted letter could be a powerful tool, so he decided to employ his skills in written communication to gain an advantage. He sat down at his typewriter, fingers flying across the keys, crafting a carefully worded letter to Vincent. He used his eloquence and persuasion to outline the benefits of a truce, citing the potential for increased profits and a resolution to the bloodshed that had plagued their operations. Vincent, however, was not one to be easily swayed by written words. He received Anthony's letter with a scoff, crumpling it up and tossing it into the fireplace in his speakeasy. He preferred face-to-face negotiations, where he could rely on his charm and charisma to assert his dominance. Determined to make his point, Anthony persisted with his written communication efforts. He sent a series of meticulously crafted reports and memos to key members of Vincent's gang, outlining the risks and consequences of their ongoing feud. He also used encrypted messages to send anonymous warnings to Vincent, hinting at betrayals from within his own ranks. The written communication barrage had an effect on Vincent, who was forced to acknowledge the strategic acumen of his rival. He realized that Anthony's well-thought-out messages were hitting close to home and exposing vulnerabilities in his operation. Vincent knew he needed to retaliate and decided to send a personal letter to Anthony, challenging him to a face-to-face negotiation. Anthony received Vincent's letter and accepted the invitation. The meeting was set at a neutral location, a swanky speakeasy in downtown Chicago. As they sat down at the table, tension crackling in the air, their dialogue was snappy and authentic to the time period, laced with veiled threats and sharp retorts. As the negotiation progressed, it became apparent that their written communication had laid the groundwork for a potential truce. Anthony's eloquence and precision in his letters had earned Vincent's respect, while Vincent's directness and determination had impressed Anthony. They realized that their feud was costing them both in terms of profits and lives lost. In a surprising turn of events, Anthony and Vincent put their differences aside and reached a truce. They shook hands, sealing the deal, and agreed to work together to expand their bootlegging operations, realizing that cooperation would be more profitable than conflict. Communicating with Influence discusses techniques for communicating with influence, including persuasion, negotiation, and storytelling. Title: Whispers of Deception. A 1920s mobster tale. It was the roaring 1920s, and the city of New York was a battleground for mobsters vying for control of the illegal alcohol trade. Among them were two formidable figures, Giovanni the Don DeLuca and Isabella the Black Widow Russo. Both were known for their cunning minds and persuasive abilities, and their rivalry was legendary in the criminal underworld. Giovanni was a suave and charismatic mob boss, known for his silver tongue and impeccable negotiation skills. He had a reputation for always getting what he wanted, and his ability to communicate with influence was unmatched. His office, located in the heart of Little Italy, was adorned with lavish furnishings, and the walls were adorned with paintings that spoke to his love for the arts. Isabella, on the other hand, was a femme fatale with a reputation for her beauty and ruthlessness. She was a master of persuasion and manipulation, often using her feminine charms to get what she wanted. Her office, located in a speakeasy in Harlem, was dimly lit and exuded an air of mystery, with shadows dancing on the walls and the scent of cigars wafting in the air. Their rivalry took an unexpected turn when they met at a clandestine gathering in a speakeasy. Sparks flew as their eyes locked, and they were drawn to each other despite their differences. Romance blossomed between them, and soon they found themselves entangled in a forbidden love affair, keeping their relationship a secret from their respective crime families. As their romance grew deeper, Giovanni and Isabella realized that their communication skills were not only used against each other but could also be harnessed to their advantage in their criminal activities. They began to collaborate, using persuasion, negotiation, and storytelling techniques to manipulate their rivals and expand their empires. Their first joint venture was a daring negotiation with a rival mob boss, Salvatore the Shark Lombardi, who had been encroaching on their territories. Giovanni and Isabella used their combined charm and persuasion to convince Salvatore to back down, promising him a cut of their profits in return for his allegiance. Salvatore, captivated by their words, agreed to their terms, not realizing that he was falling into a carefully crafted trap. But not all was smooth sailing in their relationship. Betrayal lurked around the corner as Isabella's second-in-command, Marco, grew suspicious of her actions. He had been vying for Isabella's favor and was resentful of her growing closeness with Giovanni. Marco, fueled by jealousy and ambition, decided to take matters into his own hands and approached Salvatore with an offer to betray Giovanni and Isabella in exchange for a larger share of the profits. Salvatore, enticed by the opportunity, agreed to Marco's proposal. The stage was set for a dramatic showdown, and Giovanni and Isabella found themselves in a precarious position. They realized they had to use all their skills in communicating with influence to salvage their relationship and outwit their enemies. With their empires at stake, Giovanni and Isabella used their persuasive abilities to rally their loyal supporters and devise a plan to foil Marco's betrayal. They crafted a compelling narrative, leveraging their storytelling skills to sway the loyalty of their allies and turn the tables on Marco and Salvatore. The final showdown took place in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The tension was palpable as guns were drawn, and the air was thick with anticipation. Giovanni and Isabella, standing side by side, used their persuasive powers to convince Marco and Salvatore that they had been duped, and that their real enemy was each other. In a hail of gunfire, the betrayal was exposed. Crisis Communication explores the strategies and best practices for effective communication during crisis situations. Title: Whispers of Deception. A 1920s mobster tale. The sun had set over the city, casting long shadows as Giovanni and Isabella stood face to face in Giovanni's lavish office. The tension between them was palpable, as they grappled with the aftermath of a violent betrayal that had shaken their crime families to the core. Isabella's eyes burned with anger, and Giovanni's jaw was clenched in determination. They had been through thick and thin together, their relationship forged in the fires of forbidden love and mutual ambition. But now, they faced their greatest challenge yet, a crisis that threatened to tear them apart. Giovanni paced back and forth, his normally smooth demeanor marred by the turmoil within him. Isabella watched him closely, her heart torn between her love for him and her duty to her crime family. She knew she had to be strong, to fight for what she believed in, but it pained her to see Giovanni in such turmoil. "We've been betrayed, Isabella," Giovanni said, his voice tinged with frustration. "Marco was a snake in our midst, and now Salvatore has turned against us. We need to act fast, or we'll lose everything we've built." Isabella nodded, her mind racing with thoughts of vengeance and survival. She had faced crises before, but this one was different. It struck at the heart of her relationship with Giovanni. She had to find a way to communicate with him, to persuade him to see the bigger picture and stand by her side. "I know, Giovanni," Isabella said, her voice steady despite the storm raging within her. "But we can't let this crisis break us. We need to be strategic, to communicate with influence and turn the tide in our favor." Giovanni stopped pacing and looked at Isabella, his eyes searching hers for answers. He knew she was right, but the pain of betrayal was still raw. He couldn't fathom how Marco had deceived them, and why Salvatore had turned against them. Isabella approached Giovanni, placing a hand on his arm, her touch a soothing balm amidst the chaos. "Giovanni, we've come so far together. We've built an empire based on trust and loyalty. We can't let this crisis tear us apart now." Giovanni looked into Isabella's eyes, his resolve strengthening. He knew she was right. They couldn't afford to let their emotions cloud their judgment. They needed a plan, a strategy to regain control of the situation. "We need to use our negotiation skills to our advantage," Giovanni said, his voice filled with determination. "We can't afford to be reactive. We need to be proactive, to anticipate our enemies' moves and counter them with precision." Isabella nodded, her admiration for Giovanni's strategic mind evident in her eyes. "We need to be swift and decisive," she said. "Our communication needs to be calculated, persuasive, and unwavering. We can't show weakness or doubt." Giovanni and Isabella spent hours strategizing, using their negotiation skills to craft a plan that would turn the tables on Marco and Salvatore. They knew they had to be cunning and shrewd, using every tool at their disposal to outmaneuver their enemies. As the dawn approached, Giovanni and Isabella emerged from the shadows, ready to face their rivals head-on. Their communication was sharp and calculated, their words laced with persuasion and conviction. They used storytelling techniques to sway their allies and gain their support, while simultaneously planting seeds of doubt and deception among Marco and Salvatore's ranks. The final showdown took place in a deserted warehouse, just as the sun began to rise. Guns were drawn, and tensions were high. Communicating in a Diverse World addresses the challenges and opportunities of communicating in a diverse and inclusive environment. Title: Shadows of Loyalty. A 1920s mobster tale. The jazz music blared in the speakeasy as Luca and Rosa, two mobsters from rival crime families, found themselves in a tense negotiation. They were sitting in a dimly lit back room, the air thick with smoke and the scent of betrayal. Luca was a seasoned mobster, known for his charm and cunning. He had risen through the ranks of the Italian mafia with unwavering loyalty to his family. Rosa, on the other hand, was a fiery Latina with a reputation for her ruthlessness and ambition. She was determined to expand her family's territory, no matter the cost. The two crime bosses had been forced to come together to address a common threat, a rival gang that was encroaching on their territories. But their past grievances and distrust made the negotiation a delicate dance of words and power. "We can't let them take our territory, Luca," Rosa said, her voice laced with determination. "We need to join forces and take them down together." Luca leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowed as he assessed Rosa's proposal. He knew that partnering with her could be risky, but he also recognized the strength in her family's operations. He had to find a way to communicate effectively in this diverse and challenging environment. "I understand your concerns, Rosa," Luca replied, his Italian accent giving weight to his words. "But we need to ensure that our family's interests are protected. We can't afford to let emotions cloud our judgment." Rosa's eyes flashed with frustration, but she knew Luca was right. They couldn't afford to let their personal grievances jeopardize their family's operations. She took a deep breath and tried to convey her intentions clearly. "I respect your loyalty to your family, Luca," Rosa said, her voice softer now. "But we both know that we're stronger together. We can achieve our mutual goals if we put aside our differences and work as a team." Luca nodded, acknowledging Rosa's words. He admired her resolve and determination. Despite their differences, he realized that effective communication in a diverse and inclusive environment required finding common ground and building trust. "We have a deal," Luca said finally, extending his hand across the table. "But let's be clear, this partnership is based on mutual benefit and trust. Any betrayal will have dire consequences." Rosa grasped Luca's hand firmly, sealing their agreement. Their negotiation had been tough, but they had come to a resolution that served their family's interests. As they left the speakeasy, Luca and Rosa knew they had to keep their partnership a secret from their respective families. The consequences of their alliance could be disastrous if word got out. They walked the streets of the 1920s city, shadows of loyalty and deceit following them. However, amidst the dangerous game of mobsters, Luca and Rosa found themselves drawn to each other in ways they couldn't explain. Their shared determination and ambition ignited a spark of romance. Despite the odds stacked against them, they couldn't resist the forbidden allure of each other's company, even as they remained wary of the betrayal that could be lurking around every corner. Their clandestine meetings were filled with snappy and authentic dialogue, as they navigated the complexities of their relationship and the treacherous world of crime. They had to be careful, knowing that their families would never approve of their forbidden love. As their partnership grew, so did their feelings for each other. But the tension between their loyalty to their families and their love for each other created a constant conflict within them. They struggled with their own motivations and backstories, torn between their duty and their desires. The crisis finally struck when their secret relationship was uncovered by a rival. Leading Through Communication discusses the role of communication in effective leadership, including vision casting, motivating, and inspiring others. Title: Underworld's Vision, a 1920s mobster tale. The smoky haze hung in the air as Don Carlo, a respected and feared mob boss, sat at the head of the table in his opulent office. His piercing eyes surveyed the room, filled with his most trusted lieutenants. He was known for his leadership skills and his ability to inspire and motivate his men. "I've called you all here for a reason," Don Carlo began, his gravelly voice commanding attention. "We're facing a new threat in our territory, and we need to come together to protect what's ours." The men murmured amongst themselves, exchanging wary glances. They knew the situation was dire, and they looked to Don Carlo for guidance. He was known for his vision casting, able to paint a vivid picture of the future and inspire his men to follow. "We can't afford to let these upstarts encroach on our territory," Don Carlo continued, his words resonating with authority. "But we need to be strategic in our approach. We can't afford to rush into violence and risk losing everything we've built." One of the lieutenants, Tony, spoke up, his loyalty to Don Carlo evident in his tone. "Don Carlo, what's your plan? How do you suggest we deal with this threat?" Don Carlo leaned back in his chair, his mind racing with ideas. He knew that effective leadership required not just giving orders, but also motivating and inspiring others to take action. "We need to communicate our strength and unity," Don Carlo said, his voice filled with conviction. "We can't let fear or greed divide us. We must present a united front to our enemies and show them that we won't back down." The man nodded, their confidence in Don Carlo unwavering. They knew that his leadership had led them to success in the past, and they were willing to follow his lead once again. "We'll send a message to our rivals," Don Carlo declared, his eyes blazing with determination. "We'll show them that we're not to be trifled with, but we'll also keep the lines of communication open. We'll use negotiation and persuasion to find a peaceful resolution, if possible." The room buzzed with energy as the lieutenants discussed strategies and plans. Don Carlo's ability to cast a compelling vision and inspire his men was evident in every word he spoke. He knew that his communication skills were key to leading his family through this crisis. In the following days, Don Carlo and his men worked tirelessly to communicate their strength and unity to their rivals. They made strategic moves, using negotiation and persuasion to prevent violence and find common ground. Don Carlo's words were snappy and authentic, reflecting the time period and the world of mobsters in the 1920s. However, amidst the chaos of the underworld, Don Carlo found himself facing betrayal from within. One of his most trusted lieutenants, Frankie, had been secretly conspiring with the rival gang. Frankie's greed and ambition had clouded his loyalty to Don Carlo, and he had been feeding information to their enemies. Don Carlo discovered Frankie's betrayal and confronted him in his office. The tension was palpable as the two men faced off, guns drawn. "I trusted you, Frankie," Don Carlo said, his voice filled with disappointment. "I gave you everything, and you betrayed me." Frankie sneered, his eyes filled with defiance. "It's nothing personal, Don Carlo. It's just business." Don Carlo's heart sank as he realized that Frankie's betrayal had put his family and their territory at risk. He had to make a decision, one that would require all his leadership skills and communication abilities. Building and Maintaining Trust provides practical tips and strategies for building and maintaining trust through effective communication. Title: Broken Trust. A 1920s mobster tale. It was a chilly night in the heart of the city, and the streets were lined with dark alleys and dimly lit speakeasies. Inside one such speakeasy, Don Carlo sat at a booth, his mind heavy with the weight of betrayal. His once trusted lieutenant, Frankie, had turned against him, and Don Carlo knew he had to confront the situation head-on. He called upon his most loyal advisor, Vincent, to join him. Vincent was known for his wise counsel and keen negotiating skills, and Don Carlo needed his support in this trying time. As Vincent approached the booth, Don Carlo's piercing eyes met his, filled with determination. "Vincent, we have a problem," Don Carlo said in a low, gravelly voice. "Frankie has betrayed us. He's been feeding information to our rivals." Vincent's eyes widened in surprise, but he quickly regained his composure. "I can't believe it, Don Carlo. Frankie was always so loyal." Don Carlo's jaw clenched as he nodded. "We need to confront Frankie and find out the extent of his betrayal. But we can't afford to lose our temper. We need to approach this with a clear head and use effective communication to salvage the situation." Vincent nodded in agreement, knowing that building and maintaining trust was crucial in their line of work. He had seen firsthand the power of effective communication in maintaining relationships and resolving conflicts. Don Carlo and Vincent made their way to Frankie's hideout, their footsteps echoing in the empty streets. The tension was palpable as they entered the dimly lit room where Frankie was waiting, a smug smirk on his face. "So, you found out, huh?" Frankie said, his voice filled with arrogance. "I did what I had to do to survive, Don Carlo. It's nothing personal." Don Carlo's eyes narrowed, but he took a deep breath, remembering the negotiation strategies he had learned. "Frankie, you're like a son to me," he said, his voice steady. "But betrayal cannot go unpunished. Tell us everything you've done, and maybe we can find a way to salvage this." Frankie hesitated, weighing his options. He knew he had crossed a line, but he also knew that Don Carlo's trust was not easily regained. He decided to come clean, revealing the extent of his betrayal and the information he had leaked to their rivals. Don Carlo listened intently, his mind working quickly to come up with a plan. He knew that rebuilding trust would require transparency and accountability. He also knew that effective communication was key in this delicate situation. "We can't let this slide, Frankie," Don Carlo said, his voice firm. "But I'm willing to give you a chance to make amends. You'll have to earn back our trust, and it won't be easy. But I'm willing to work with you if you're willing to be honest and loyal from now on." Frankie's arrogant facade crumbled, and he nodded, realizing the gravity of his actions. He had jeopardized his relationship with Don Carlo and his family, and he knew that turning back their trust would be an uphill battle. As the days went by, Don Carlo and Frankie worked on rebuilding their relationship through effective communication. Don Carlo set clear expectations and held Frankie accountable for his actions. Frankie was remorseful and worked tirelessly to prove his loyalty, going above and beyond to earn back the trust he had lost. In the midst of the turmoil, Don Carlo found solace in the support of his longtime confidant, Rosa. She was a singer at one of Don Carlo's speakeasies, and their romance had blossomed. Overcoming Communication Challenges explores common communication challenges and provides strategies for overcoming them. Title: The Art of Deception, a 1920s mobster tale. The year was 1925, and the city was buzzing with the excitement of the Roaring Twenties. In the midst of the glamour and the glitz, there was a ruthless underworld of mobsters vying for power and control. Don Salvatore, a seasoned mob boss, was known for his strategic negotiation skills and his shrewd business acumen. He had built a formidable empire, but he faced a formidable challenge in the form of a rival mob boss, Vito. Don Salvatore's lieutenant, Luca, was a trusted advisor known for his quick wit and cunning ways. He had been with Don Salvatore for years, and their relationship was built on a foundation of trust. However, as the stakes grew higher, the challenges of communication became more pronounced. Don Salvatore knew that overcoming these challenges would be key to his success in dealing with Vito. One night, Don Salvatore called Luca to his office in a hidden speakeasy, where they could speak freely without prying ears. The air was thick with tension as they sat down, facing each other across the ornate desk. "We're facing a tough situation, Luca," Don Salvatore said, his voice low and steady. "Vito is trying to encroach on our territory, and we can't afford to let that happen." Luca nodded, his eyes blazing with determination. "I've been gathering information on Vito's operations, and I think I have a plan," he said, his voice filled with confidence. Don Salvatore leaned in, listening intently as Luca laid out his plan. However, as the discussion progressed, they encountered challenges in their communication. They had different opinions on how to handle the situation, and emotions ran high. Don Salvatore could sense that Luca was becoming defensive, and he knew that overcoming this challenge was crucial to their success. Taking a deep breath, Don Salvatore decided to apply the strategies he had learned in the negotiation chapter on overcoming communication challenges. He paused the conversation and addressed the elephant in the room. "Luca, I value your input, and I know you have our best interests at heart," Don Salvatore said, his voice calm but firm. "But we need to keep emotions in check and focus on finding a solution together." Luca took a deep breath, realizing that his defensiveness was hindering their progress. He nodded and apologized, and they resumed the discussion with a renewed sense of collaboration. They brainstormed ideas, debated pros and cons, and ultimately arrived at a strategic plan to counter Vito's moves. It required careful execution and coordination, but they were confident in their plan. They also made sure to keep their communication channels open, addressing any challenges as they arose and finding solutions together. In the midst of the chaos, Don Salvatore found solace in the company of his longtime love interest, Sofia. She was a dancer at one of his speakeasies, and their relationship had weathered its share of challenges. Sofia had always been fiercely loyal to Don Salvatore, but she had concerns about the dangers of their lifestyle. One evening, as Don Salvatore and Sofia were sitting in his lavish office, sipping on whiskey, Sofia voiced her fears. "Don Salvatore, I love you, but this life scares me," Sofia said, her eyes filled with concern. "I don't want to see you get hurt or worse." Don Salvatore reached out and took Sofia's hand, his heart swelling with affection. "I understand your worries, Sofia," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "But I promise you, I will do everything in my power to keep us safe. Your trust means everything to me." Communication Ethics discusses the importance of ethical communication and the ethical considerations in various communication contexts. Title: The Code of Silence, a 1920s mobster tale. The bustling streets of New York City in the 1920s were a battleground for rival mobsters seeking power and control. Among them was Tony the Hammer D'Angelo, a charismatic and cunning mob boss known for his ruthless tactics. However, beneath his tough exterior, Tony had a strict code of ethics when it came to communication. One day, Tony received a call from his rival, Angelo the Snake Rossi, who was notorious for his double-crossing ways. Angelo proposed a meeting at a neutral location to discuss a potential alliance. Tony was wary, knowing that Angelo couldn't be trusted, but he couldn't resist the opportunity to expand his empire. Tony gathered his trusted lieutenant, Marco, a loyal and sharp-witted enforcer, to accompany him to the meeting. As they arrived at the speakeasy where Angelo was waiting, Tony's mind raced with anticipation and caution. The air was tense with the possibility of betrayal. Angelo greeted Tony with a smirk, his eyes glittering with mischief. "Tony, my old friend, always a pleasure," Angelo said in a smooth voice, oozing with charm. Tony nodded curtly, his gaze fixed on Angelo. "Let's get down to business," he said, his voice firm and unwavering. As the negotiation began, Tony was keenly aware of the importance of ethical communication. He knew that Angelo was a master manipulator, and he needed to be cautious to avoid falling into his traps. He listened attentively, analyzing Angelo's words for hidden meanings and reading his body language for any signs of deception. Marco, on the other hand, was growing impatient. He had a personal vendetta against Angelo and was itching for a confrontation. He interrupted Angelo with a scowl, his voice dripping with hostility. "You can't be trusted, Angelo," Marco said, his fists clenched tightly. "We know you're a snake in the grass, always looking for an angle." Tony shot Marco a warning glance, signaling him to hold his temper. He then turned his attention back to Angelo, maintaining a calm and composed demeanor. "Marco, let me handle this," Tony said in a low voice, and Marco reluctantly nodded. Tony continued the negotiation, employing his strategic communication skills. He avoided making hasty decisions, asked probing questions, and sought clarification on Angelo's proposals. He also articulated his own terms clearly, making sure they aligned with his ethical principles. As the negotiation progressed, Angelo tried to tempt Tony with promises of power and wealth. He painted an enticing picture of the benefits of their alliance, but Tony remained steadfast in his commitment to ethical communication. He refused to compromise his values, knowing that the consequences of unethical actions could be severe. After hours of intense negotiation, Tony and Angelo reached an agreement. They shook hands, sealing the deal. However, Tony knew that Angelo could still be a threat in the future, and he would need to stay vigilant. As Tony and Marco left the speakeasy, Marco couldn't contain his frustration any longer. "Why did you let him off the hook, boss?" Marco asked, his voice tinged with anger. "He's a snake, and he's going to betray us sooner or later." Tony put a hand on Marco's shoulder, his expression serious. "We operate by a code of ethics, Marco," Tony said firmly. "We may be in a dangerous business, but we will always communicate with integrity and honor. That's what sets us apart." Marco nodded, understanding Tony's wisdom. He admired his boss for his unwavering commitment to ethical communication, even in the treacherous world of organized crime. Conclusion summarizes key concepts and provides final thoughts on the power of communication in building trust, inspiring loyalty, and leading effectively. Title: Silent Loyalties, A Tale of Mobsters and Communication. The Roaring Twenties were in full swing, and the streets of Chicago were alive with the sounds of jazz, the clinking of glasses in speakeasies, and the gunshots of mobsters fighting for control of the city. In the midst of this chaos, Vincent "Vinny" DeLuca, a young and ambitious mobster, found himself entangled in a web of loyalties and betrayals. Vinny had risen through the ranks of the notorious DeLuca crime family, led by his ruthless father, Don Carlo. He was known for his sharp wit and quick thinking, which earned him respect among his peers. But Vinny had a secret. He was in love with Maria, the daughter of rival mob boss, Salvatore "Sal" Russo. One day, Vinny received a message from Sal, requesting a meeting to discuss a truce between their families. Vinny was hesitant, knowing the bitter history between the DeLucas and the Russos, but he couldn't resist the chance to see Maria again. He agreed to the meeting and arrived at a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of the city. As Vinny entered the dimly lit warehouse, he spotted Sal and his enforcer, Tony the Blade, waiting for him. Sal greeted him with a nod, while Tony eyed him warily. "We need to end this bloodshed, Vinny," Sal said, his voice gruff but determined. "Our families have suffered enough." Vinny nodded in agreement, knowing that the violence had taken a toll on both sides. He was determined to find a way to bring peace to the streets of Chicago, even if it meant going against his own father. The negotiation began, and Vinny drew upon the key concepts of effective communication he had learned over the years. He listened actively, maintaining eye contact with Sal, and refrained from interrupting. He asked probing questions to understand Sal's motivations and concerns, and he shared his own perspective with honesty and authenticity. As the conversation progressed, Vinny's thoughts were torn between his loyalty to his family and his love for Maria. He couldn't bear the thought of betraying either side, but he knew he had to find a solution that would satisfy both parties. Tony, however, was not convinced. He interjected with hostility, accusing Vinny of being a traitor to their family. "You can't trust this DeLuca scum, Sal," Tony spat, his hand resting on the handle of his gun. He's just playing us." Vinny remained calm, using his communication skills to diffuse the tension. He reassured Sal that he was committed to finding a peaceful resolution and that he would do whatever it took to bridge the gap between their families. Sal's eyes softened, and he nodded in acknowledgement. He could see the sincerity in Vinny's words, and he knew that Vinny was unlike the other mobsters he had dealt with in the past. After hours of intense negotiation, Vinny and Sal finally reached an agreement. They shook hands, and Tony reluctantly followed suit. The truce was established, and Vinny felt a mix of relief and apprehension. He knew that maintaining the trust and loyalty of both families would be a challenging task. As Vinny left the warehouse, he couldn't help but think about the power of communication in building trust and inspiring loyalty. He knew that it was not just about the words spoken, but also about the nonverbal cues, the active listening, and the genuine connection formed through honest and ethical communication. In the days that followed, Vinny worked tirelessly to ensure that the truce held. He faced obstacles and setbacks, but he remained committed to his goal of bringing peace to the city. Here is a summary of the key strategies from the book Silent Loyalties, a tale of mobsters and communication in a table format. Chapter: Key Concepts, Strategies, Communication Ethics. Importance of ethical communication. Be honest and authentic in your communication. Consider the ethical implications of your words and actions. Respect others' perspectives and avoid manipulation or deception. Overcoming communication challenges. Common communication challenges. Practice active listening and maintain eye contact. Ask probing questions to understand others' motivations and concerns. Stay calm and diffuse tension during conflicts. Conclusion: Power of communication in building trust and inspiring loyalty. Establish genuine connections through honest and authentic communication. Bridge differences and find common ground. Follow through on commitments and maintain consistency in communication. Epilogue: The power of communication. As Vinny sat in his lavish office, overlooking the city skyline, he reflected on his journey since he first picked up the book The Power of Communication, Skills to Build Trust, Inspire Loyalty, and Lead Effectively by Fred Garcia. It had been a few years since he had implemented the strategies and concepts from the book, and the impact on his life and career had been profound. Vinny had realized that communication was not just about conveying messages, but it was an art form that required skill, strategy, and ethics. He had learned the importance of being honest and authentic in his communication, considering the ethical implications of his words and actions, and respecting others' perspectives. He had also honed his active listening skills, asking probing questions to understand others' motivations and concerns, and staying calm during conflicts to diffuse tension. These communication strategies had helped Vinny overcome various challenges in his mobster world. He had built and maintained trust with his associates, inspiring loyalty and respect. He had used his communication skills to negotiate complex deals, resolve conflicts, and lead his team effectively. Vinny had also found that by establishing genuine connections through communication, he had been able to bridge differences and find common ground with others, even in the ruthless world of organized crime. As a result, Vinny had risen through the ranks of the mob, becoming a respected and influential figure in the underworld. He had earned a reputation for being a shrewd negotiator, a visionary leader, and a man of his word. His communication skills had not only helped him achieve his personal goals but had also made him a force to be reckoned with in the mobster world. But it wasn't just in his criminal endeavors that Vinny had experienced success. He had also applied the principles of effective communication in his personal life. He had rebuilt strained relationships with his family, mended broken friendships, and even found love with a woman who appreciated his genuine communication style. Looking back, Vinny realized that the power of communication had transformed his life in ways he never imagined. It had given him the tools to navigate complex situations, build trust, inspire loyalty, and lead effectively. He was grateful for the wisdom he had gained from the power of communication and the impact it had made on his life. As Vinny closed the book, he smiled. He knew that he would continue to apply these communication skills in all aspects of his life, knowing that they were the key to his success. With renewed determination, he looked forward to the next chapter of his life, armed with the power of communication and the skills to build trust, inspire loyalty, and lead effectively. The end of one journey was just the beginning of another, and Vinny was ready to embrace it with confidence and purpose. The end. Answer key 1. The role of communication in building trust, inspiring loyalty, and effective leadership is central. Effective communication fosters trust, builds strong relationships, inspires loyalty among team members, and enables leaders to convey their vision and motivate others. 2. The key components of effective communication include verbal, nonverbal, and written communication. Verbal communication involves language choice, tone, and messaging. Nonverbal communication includes body language, facial expressions, and gestures. Written communication encompasses various forms such as email, reports, and other written documents. 3. To improve listening skills, one can practice active listening techniques, such as giving full attention, avoiding interrupting, and asking clarifying questions. Additionally, being present, empathetic, and open-minded can enhance listening skills. 4. Best practices for verbal communication include choosing appropriate language, tone, and messaging that align with the audience, context, and desired outcome. Using clear and concise language, speaking confidently, and maintaining eye contact can also improve verbal communication. 5. Nonverbal communication, such as body language and facial expressions, can significantly impact the effectiveness of communication. Being aware of and controlling nonverbal cues, such as posture, gestures, and facial expressions, can enhance communication by conveying confidence, empathy, and authenticity. 6. To improve written communication skills, one can focus on clarity, structure, and coherence in their writing, using appropriate language, organizing thoughts logically, and proofreading for grammar and spelling errors can also enhance written communication. 7. Techniques for communicating with influence include understanding the needs and motivations of the audience, using persuasive language, presenting compelling evidence, and telling engaging stories. Effective negotiation skills and the ability to adapt communication styles can also enhance communication influence. 8. Effective communication during crisis situations requires timely and accurate information sharing, being empathetic and compassionate, and providing reassurance. Being prepared, maintaining transparency, and actively managing communication channels can help mitigate crises and build trust. 9. Communicating in a diverse and inclusive environment requires sensitivity to cultural differences, active listening to diverse perspectives, and adapting communication styles to accommodate different communication preferences. Respect, inclusivity, and empathy are essential in promoting effective communication in diverse settings. 10. Effective leadership through communication involves casting a compelling vision, motivating and inspiring team members, and providing clear expectations. Communicating with authenticity, transparency, and empathy can foster trust, build loyalty, and inspire team members to achieve common goals. 11. Strategies for building and maintaining trust through communication include being honest, transparent, and reliable, consistently delivering on promises, actively listening to concerns, and being responsive to feedback can also build trust and loyalty among team members. 12. Common communication challenges, such as misinterpretation, miscommunication, or conflicts, can be overcome by practicing active listening, clarifying expectations, and addressing concerns openly and constructively. Seeking feedback, being adaptable, and using effective conflict resolution techniques can also help overcome communication challenges. 13. Ethical considerations in communication include being truthful, respecting confidentiality, and considering the impact of communication on stakeholders. Avoiding manipulation, biases, and discriminatory language is important in ensuring ethical communication practices. 14. Applying the concepts and techniques learned from the book to personal and professional communication situations involves actively reflecting on and evaluating one's own communication practices, seeking feedback from others, and continuously improving communication skills through practice and feedback. 15. Practical steps to continuously improve communication skills include setting communication goals, seeking opportunities for feedback and practice, learning from communication experts, and reflecting on communication successes and challenges to identify areas for improvement. Ongoing self-assessment and commitment to continuous improvement can lead to enhanced communication skills and effectiveness in leadership roles.